The New York Rangers are definitely a team that seem to be looking to go out there and acquire a star/superstar caliber player in a trade to really kind of make this team a whole lot better. And this past weekend, we almost saw a trade happen where we would have seen a star caliber player in JT Miller sent over to the New York Rangers in a trade, but that deal fell through, it seems like, kind of last minute as that deal was almost completed. It follows through, and then we had some pretty big reports the other day kind of talking about that trade offer/package that was almost accepted by the Vancouver Canucks, and then the Rangers and Canucks couldn't quite come to an agreement on some pick protections. And I did have a video yesterday actually breaking that whole kind of situation down and kind of the reasons why that trade did fall through, as well as that whole kind of trade package and details when it was offered by the Rangers. So if you haven't already, definitely go check that video out. But this situation here, I think, is, interesting because obviously the Rangers are a team who are, really looking to go out there and acquire a star and clearly have some pretty big interest in, acquiring a guy like JT Miller. But now, since this deal has fallen through, it definitely seems like the Rangers are going to have to kind of pivot in a different direction if they want to go out there and acquire a star. And maybe it won't be JT Miller or even, Elias Pettersson, who obviously was also kind of rumored to be involved in a possible trade. Maybe they still do end up trading away one of JT Miller or Elias Pettersson. It's definitely possible, but at this point, it doesn't seem as likely as before to be with the New York Rangers. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, whether or not the Rangers actually acquire, JT, which I would assume that would be the player who they would get from the Canucks. They're over a guy like Elias because that seems like, who they're kind of more looking to target. But either way, I think it's a big question of kind of, what's next for the New York Rangers if JT Miller is not going to be their kind of target here to go after and kind of, be that star that they want to acquire, because obviously this team clearly, doesn't want to do a full rebuild, doesn't even really want to do a retool because, they obviously have made a pretty strong push for someone like JT Miller, who was, on the wrong side of 30 there. He's getting up there in age a bit now and, may not be in his kind of later 30s, but is starting to get up there towards his mid 30s and is obviously someone who is, not necessarily in his prime of his career anymore. So the Rangers making a big push for someone like that when this team has been playing some terrible hockey for the most part this season. Obviously, as of late, in the month of January, things have looked better. But if you're talking about overall this season, this Rangers team has been very disappointing and has been very bad. And, to me, going out there and acquiring JT Miller, I think there were circumstances that would have made that the right move. But that package that we saw, to me, just kind of tells me that Chris Drury is getting really desperate and really needs to kind of, get a deal done. At least he feels like it, because there were reports that we saw, as a Zibanejad kind of trade offer, 1-for-1 for JT Miller. And then not too long later, we're seeing reports of the Rangers offering, Philip Hedl, Lindgren, some prospects and a first, right, for JT Miller. So that's a pretty big difference there. Like, what was it, less than a week or so kind of after that was kind of reported. I think something like around there maybe. So, that's a pretty big difference there. So to me, the kind of feeling that I'm getting from this whole situation here with Chris Drury and this kind of trade situation with JT Miller is, Drury is getting really desperate, I think. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think he's getting desperate, or at least really wants to kind of get, a trade across the table there. And that package that he kind of, offered up there, and I talked about it in yesterday's video as well, is, I think that was accepted. That would have been a terrible thing for this New York Rangers future, of this organization. I think that would have really hindered things, long-term for this team. You really kind of are locking yourselves into, certain players kind of long-term, like JT Miller, obviously, and Zibanejad, because you would have been keeping Zibanejad in that package. So my kind of thoughts have been, if you're going to be acquiring JT Miller, you kind of have to find a trade for Zibanejad, whether that was sending him over to Vancouver or sending him somewhere else. You just couldn't keep Zibanejad and get JT Miller back because, they're both obviously, over 30 years old now, so they're kind of on the wrong side of their career right now, you could say. And, both are kind of past their primes, it seems like, as well. Both have big contracts. They both expire at the exact same time, and they also have some, no trades in there, no trade clauses, no movement clauses also. So there's a lot of kind of, issues with those contracts. They're going to make it even harder to move in the future as well. And, with their cap hits, I don't think it's necessarily awful for JT Miller making $8 million per season, but when you add on, when you have already a contract like this Zibanejad one, and you're really you're locking yourselves in there to two kind of aging centers who are past their primes, who are making quite a bit of money. To me, that's just not the right decision for a team like the Rangers, who are in a spot right now where we should probably be going towards a kind of, slight little retool here. And I don't necessarily think retools always work, but I do think that this Rangers team needs to and should use this season as not a necessarily kind of full-on selling season, but go out there, trade away some of these assets like a Ryan Lindgren, like a Riley Smith, a Jimmy Vesey, who, very well might not end up returning. And I think Will Borjan very well could end up getting re-signed by this team, whether I like it or not. I don't love the idea of doing that, but if it's for a reasonable contract, I'm okay with it. But, if you're not going to be re-signing, and definitely it seems like we're probably not, guys like Ryan Lindgren and Riley Smith for sure, I don't see them coming back at all. There's a chance, but I don't see Riley Smith or Lindgren returning. I think you have to go out there and trade away those players. Those are guys who are going to be able to net you back some assets, whether it is, a low-tier draft pick or a low-tier prospect. At minimum, you're going to be able to get something decent of value back, whether it is a fifth-round pick for Lindgren and a fourth round pick that's conditional that could go up to a third if, they win the first 2 rounds or something in a Riley Smith trade. Whatever it is, there are options out there, and there are going to be, teams willing to give away assets, whether it is picks or prospects, for guys like Ryan Lindgren and Riley Smith, as well as guys like Will Borjan, but also kind of depends on what the Rangers want to do with him. But I think there are guys who can be traded away, who can net back some future assets, who can still, be players who you're trading away, and you're not necessarily kind of, losing a super key player like a Lindgren or a Riley Smith. I mean, you trade away one of those guys, it's not like the season's going to, completely fall apart even worse than it already has. So you trade away one of those guys, possibly. You open up a roster spot for some young guy to kind of take that spot and develop it and get a chance at the NHL level. You still try and push for the playoffs there like we're doing right now, and you still can, because you just traded away Lindgren and Riley Smith, who, aren't playing that big of a role in this team. You netted back a couple assets, but you also are just able to kind of keep going for things. They're trying to make the playoffs, try and make that push. Maybe you make it, maybe you don't. Maybe you get a good pick, maybe you don't. But either way, at least you netted back some assets. You develop some kind of more young guys, and you have a better idea on kind of what you want to see from certain players going forward in the future. So that's kind of my mindset going forward after this JT Miller kind of trade fell through. I don't think this team needs to go out there and, force some superstar, star caliber trade and overpay, or make kind of a bad decision like we would have in this JT Miller trade, in my opinion. I think we just have to kind of hopefully be patient and kind of wait for the right guy to become available. And it does seem like there's going to be quite a few kind of, top 6 caliber forwards and top 4 caliber defensemen available in free agency. And the Rangers are going to have a good amount of, cap space available to spend in free agency as well this upcoming offseason. So I think this could be good for this team. I mean, I'm not saying I want to see this team go out there and, spend a crazy amount of money in free agency, because, normally you are kind of overpaying for guys for the most part in free agency. So it's not ideal to kind of build your kind of core roster out from free agency, but I think this team can definitely add in a few really good pieces in free agency, add in some really good, top 4 caliber defensemen or top 6 caliber forwards, and, really add some impactful players in free agency with the cap space that this team does have available. And they can also open up even more if they want to, trade away certain players. But I just think that with how good this free agency is looking like it's possibly going to be, guys like Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen, you've got Dmitry Orlov, Ekblad, Provorov, Brock Besser, Claude Giroux, Jeff Petrie, Brad Marchand, Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, even like Taylor Hall, Pionk, Andrew Mangiapane, even like TJ Oshie might not be a terrible kind of, depth add or something, and kind of a veteran role there. I mean, there are a lot of talented players who are top 6 caliber kind of guys, and, who I think could be some really nice additions to this team on the, the back end defense side of things there, and also the forward side of things. So I think this is going to be a good free agency, and definitely, a nice time to have a good amount of cap space available. So I think that's kind of nice that things are aligning decently for the Rangers in free agency. Obviously, like I said, you don't want to be really kind of creating your whole kind of main core of players through free agency, because you're going to have to more than likely overpay, just on the average kind of market value for most players in free agency, because that's what's, normally happens. Sometimes you get those kind of instant throw check contracts there where things work out quite well, but for the most part, you're kind of overpaying, a little bit. So I think that, going out there and acquiring a couple of really good players in free agency is definitely the right move, but this team is still going to have to make some moves, via trade more than likely as well, to add in some depth kind of players. And, hopefully we can see some of these trades happen where we're sending away some expiring contracts. We're seeing some of these kind of young guys really get their chance, and hopefully some of them can really, show themselves and really kind of earn themselves a spot, or at least kind of, somewhat earn themselves a spot for next season, at least give them kind of a leg up there, and really kind of show management and coaching staff that, maybe there are a couple of really good kind of youngsters here who have the chance to be, top 6 caliber forwards, or, top 4 caliber defensemen, guys like Victor Mancini, Brett Berard, Brendan Othman. They really need to show themselves, or really kind of cement themselves when they get their chance. Hopefully, some of them do, obviously. I mean, Berard, we've seen a decent amount this season, but Mancini, Othman, I definitely would not mind seeing a little more at the NHL level this season. I mean, obviously, Othman, we haven't quite seen him yet, but last season we saw him for a bit there making his debut and stuff. So I would not be against seeing some more young guys get their kind of looks there at the NHL level. And that doesn't mean, we're necessarily kind of tanking or anything by doing this and kind of trading away some of the expiring contracts. I just think it's kind of, the right move for this team's kind of long-term future to look more towards that than just towards this season. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on this whole kind of, situation with the Rangers and JT Miller, and kind of what do you want to see going forward? Do you want to see them trade for a different star midseason here? Do you want to see them wait and kind of be patient for this upcoming offseason? Sign someone in free agency? What kind of big moves do you want to see out of this Rangers team? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one. Let's go Rangers.